Welcome to Home Buying 101 with Francisco Gonzalez. Today I have a very, very special guest, my partner in crime, Daniel Ahluwalia. Daniel, thank you for walking across the office and being on the show today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
So Daniel, tell us your background really quick, and then I'll go into my background since I've never really introduced myself to our viewers.
Oh yeah, it's definitely good. So my name is Daniel. Let's see here. I've been in the insurance industry my entire career, over 10 years. We've been doing personal lines, home and auto insurance for over 10 years. And most recently, me and Francisco, we partnered up here, almost 2
years ago.
2 years ago.
Actually, it's already been 2 years.
Yeah, it's just been 2 years. It's flying by. I don't know if that's good or bad, but as we get older, right? So it's been flying by.
So me and Daniel actually met in college. Me and his wife, who they've been married, 11 years now?
Yes.
Me and her went to high school together. So it comes full circle. Me and him went to college together, and then we both jumped into the insurance field in different ways. I jumped into the life insurance field of New York Life, and then we ended up both in Phoenix. I actually came to Phoenix because of you, because you started doing insurance, and I was like, I like this. I want to do this too. So full circle, we ended up talking about 2 years ago and said, hey, let's just join forces and take over the world together. So
there we go.
Here we are. Green Planet Insurance, taking over one home at a time.
There you go.
So Daniel, I wanted to, of course, have you on the show today so both of us can talk about insurance and kind of educate our clients, because we've talked to them about the whole home buying process. But one thing that no one ever remembers about is, of course, home insurance. And you want to protect this asset. This is pretty much the largest purchase someone's going to make. So we want to be able to educate them on what should be covered and how it should be covered. So I want to start off with, let's just start talking about the policy in general. When it comes to the policy, what's covered, and we'll go from there, and we'll just kind of deep dive into it.
Okay.
So let's just start off with the policy itself. It goes into a couple different coverages. So let's just start off with what coverage A is on an insurance quote.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think when you're getting quotes or you're looking at your policy, you're going to see a bunch of numbers and a bunch of stuff on the paper. I think it's really important that you just kind of understand the coverages. So coverage A, what this means and what this does is this is going to be the cost to rebuild your home in case it's fully destroyed, okay? That's going to be what coverage A, it's going to be a number. Typically right now, we're seeing over $150 a square foot to replace your home. So that's going to be what that number is. And how it's calculated is every one of our insurance carriers that we have that we partner with, they go ahead and they have a replacement cost estimate, and we put the details of the home, like square footage, things like that. And that's how we do like number of bedrooms, bathrooms, garages, and we go ahead and we get a number, and that's what number we're going to insure your home. Now, these carriers, they're doing really good for protecting you against inflation. We're seeing just crazy inflation right now. There's a coverage that's also tied to coverage A. It's called extended replacement cost. So it's an additional 25%. So, if you've got
let's say $400,000 worth of coverage,
yep,
you still have another 25% above that
on top
just
of
in case. And then also another 10% for building ordinance that's built into your policy also, remember.
Yeah, I mean, and that's building ordinance coverage is one of those coverages. It's not standard, it's not required, but you definitely want to make sure that coverage is in there. What that covers is going to be in case your home is destroyed in a fire or anything like that. It's going to be covering if there was any updates to the laws where you need now to change, to change or update or modernize some of your plumbing or energy efficiency, things like that.
For example, if they don't want you using a certain type of wood or a certain type of paint, and that's what the paint mostly was, your house was painted in this paint, that 10% gives you an extra 10% above what your coverage A is to pay for that added expense. So Daniel, let me ask you this. What is the difference between actual cash value and replacement cost?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're going to see on these quotes, and a lot of times these quotes, they can hide a lot of this stuff, so you really got to ask the questions. There's two ways where you can get a policy. One is going to be actual cash value, and the other is going to be replacement cost. What actual cash value is, it basically depreciates the value of your home and your belongings inside. So if you've got a piece of furniture, like a table that's 5 years old, and it's got a 10-year useful life, well, if you do an actual cash value, they're only going to give you 50% of the value of that piece of table to replace it. Where replacement costs, they're going to step in there and they're going to pay for you to get fully made whole again and get it fully replaced. Whatever the cost is in the modern time now, it's going to be what it is.
And most of the time, the most important things to look at is if your roof is replacement cost and you want your personal property to be replacement cost.
Yes.
So, Daniel, what is coverage B when it comes to other structures? What does that cover?
Yeah, so coverage B, other structures. Now, you're going to see this number. Typically, it's going to be a percentage of coverage A. Usually, it's about 10%. What this is, this covers any detached structures on your property. And then I get the question a lot of times is, well, I don't have any detached structures. Well, this also covers the fence around your home, the exterior wall. And if you did have a detached shed or garage that's detached from the home, that's covered there.
Okay. And then let's just jump to one of the important things I think of is coverage C when it comes to personal belongings.
Oh, yes. So your furniture, clothes, TVs, things like that, that's going to be your coverage C, and that's going to be provided on the quote as well. Now, there are sub-limits that you got to just be really mindful of. So say, for example, coverage C says $100,000. It's limited for jewelry, money, coins, collectibles, silver, furs, etc. There's sub-limits on that, even if your quote doesn't say it. So say you get a quote and it says, I've got $100,000 of personal property. There is sublimits. They all have it. It's standard on home insurance. So just be mindful if you've got any kind of pieces of art, jewelry, and things like that that you want to insure for the full amount, that you get those items scheduled on there. So if you've got a $5,000 engagement ring or something like that that you want covered, usually jewelry is only limited to about $1,000 to $2,500. Yeah, it's what we've seen.
So if there's anything that you're like, you know what, this has a really big value to me, or I know it's expensive, talk to us. We can always have that conversation and always tell you, hey, let's schedule it on there. And most of the time, all we really need is an appraisal and pictures of the item, and then we can add it to your policy. And it is an added cost, but it's always worth it to insure it just to make sure of it. So, Daniel, what about loss of use? What does that mean?
Yeah, loss of use, so coverage D, loss of use. So say, for example, your home is uninhabitable because of a covered claim. That policy is going to pay for your lodging, meals, and for you to live somewhere else while your home is being repaired or rebuilt in a claim.
Okay. What about when it comes to coverage E, personal liability? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I like to talk about coverage E and coverage F together. So your medical payments, which is your coverage F. So say, for example, you had someone come over, they tripped, slipped, and fell, and they got injured on your property. So typically there's medical payments coverage of $1,000 or $5,000. You've seen different numbers. That's going to cover for their emergency room stay. Now, if it cost more than that, where they tried to sue you, you've got coverage E, which is your personal liability coverage, which typically we see it between $100,000 to $500,000.
Okay. And then these are more added coverages I want to talk about that we always add to our policy. Explain to the people, to our viewers, what is water backup, Daniel?
Yeah, so water backup coverage, it's not a standard home insurance coverage, but we, like I said, we always add this coverage. What it is that if case, for example, your bathtub or your toilets overflow from water, they get backed up, we typically add $10,000 of coverage to cover that, and it's not standard on home insurance.
Okay. And on older homes, we do add service line coverage which can you explain to us what service line coverage is?
Yeah, service line coverage. So there is a gap in your home insurance policy where the city where you're buying your home says the lines that go under your ground, so your buried utility lines along with your telecommunication lines that go from the public road to your home underground, those are not going to be covered by the city, nor are they going to be covered under a standard home insurance policy. So if you've got a home that I would say, we usually say over 30 years, those lines, just think about it, those lines under your ground are older than 30 years. We definitely want to add service line coverage, and we typically see that coverage, it's pretty inexpensive to add, usually under $100 a year. And what it really does is it covers those lines up to $10,000 typically. And those, we've seen those claims come back, and it's expensive. I mean, because you've got to drill up.
You got to pick everything out. You have to pretty much get the service provider out there to redo the line. So it could get expensive quick.
Yep.
So Daniel, this is the big question. What's covered and what's not covered? And I guess we can also kind of throw this in there. What's the difference between home warranty and home insurance?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we get this question all the time, right? It's like, well, what is home insurance and what does it really cover? Well, I mean, when people think about home insurance, they're thinking fire, right? So if your home is damaged from a kitchen fire, electrical fire, any kind of fire in your home, that's what the main coverage is going to be. We also have the more common coverages and common claims that we see are water related. So like weather. So if your home, if there's a storm, any wind damage, hail damage, or if there's a pipe that accidentally bursts in your home causing water damage, those are going to be your typical claims for home insurance.
Okay. So what's not covered?
That's the catch, right? So what's not covered? So when you think about home insurance or any insurance policy, right, wear and tear. So if something is just getting old, so say your AC unit stops working because it's 15 years old and it's past its useful life and it just stops working, well, that's not going to be covered under your home insurance policy. If you've got a roof that say is now 25 or 30 years old and it starts leaking water, well, the roof to replace, it's not going to be covered because that's wear and tear. I mean, the useful life of a roof is 20 to 25 years, right? So that's not going to be covered. But the water damage would be covered, but it wouldn't be, right? So that's definitely the differences there. So anything like I would say kitchen appliances, AC, things like that are not going to be covered under your standard home insurance policy. That's why we always recommend to our clients to get what's called a home warranty policy, especially if you're buying a new home as a first-time home buyer. That first year, just get a home warranty policy. That's going to cover your kitchen appliances, your AC unit,
your water heater,
things like that.
So I always recommend our clients to always get a home warranty policy at least the first year. And I'll give you the perfect example. You never know how much more life those appliances have. And the best example is when I bought a home in 2020, the water heater was already on its last leg. And the inspector told us, hey, it's going to last you a little bit longer, but it might not have more than a year or two to go. So a little bit less before the year was over, that water heater went out and we called the home warranty company, $75. They got us a whole new water heater. It was like a $3,500 water heater. So I saved myself quite a bit of money there. So Daniel, when it comes to home insurance, what are some stuff that impact the prices on what your home insurance is going to cost?
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing, right? Because when we're quoting homes, we see prices all over the place. I would say the biggest thing that we see is the age of the home. So the newer the home, the more likely the price is going to be less because there's less risk for the insurance company of things that can go wrong in your home. So as your home gets older, prices typically go up unless you're doing updates to your home. And then location. So crime around the area, break-ins, things like that. Proximity to wildfire areas also impact your rates for the home insurance. And then also your personal situation. Have you filed claims in the past? How's your credit? How's your insurance score, which is part of your credit? So those are going to be the things that are going to impact your home insurance pricing.
So age of the home, age of the roof, age of the plumbing.
Age of everything, yeah.
Area.
So yeah, I mean, and then typically, like, right, we talk about with the roofs are the big example, right? So if you've got a brand new roof, I mean, what's the risk to the insurance company? Not much. But if you've got that roof that's 20 to, or even 17 to 20 years old, that's where your home insurance pricing is going to get. It's going to start going up a little bit because the carriers know that, hey, it's not if, it's just when there's going to be something unless you get that roof replaced.
Okay. And then what is the best way to get pricing on home insurance right now?
Yeah, I mean, so you definitely the best way, the best pricing that you can get is going to be when you do shop. You definitely want to make sure you reach out to like a brokerage like us, right?
Do you know any brokers?
Yeah, just a few, right? So, I mean, the beauty of working with the home insurance broker, of course, is, we do it every day. We shop it around with 20 insurance carriers to find the best deal with really good coverages. That's how you're going to do it. When you are looking to buy a home, I always say is like being in insurance all these years, it's so funny. We talk about it. It's like, everyone's concerned about, the walls were just painted or the kitchen appliances were just updated or, the lighting fixtures and all that stuff. Like, here, what are 3 things I care about is how old's the AC unit, how old's, the plumbing, and how old's the roof, right? I mean, those are the big things that I care about.
Does the roof look new? Yes. Check.
Yeah, I mean, because, hey, I mean, if you've got a roof and it's, even when you do, we always recommend to our clients, when you get an appraisal on the home, it's different than an inspection, right? We always recommend our clients to get an inspection on the home home. And even when the inspector goes out there, they don't really thoroughly do a good job looking at the roof a lot of times. So I always say is like, well, hey, how old is the roof, or do you have an estimate how long it's going to last? If it's under 5 years, that's being generous, and most likely it's not even going to last. A perfect example is like we bought a house, in 2019? And we had our home inspector go out there, and then we actually had a roof inspector go out there too, just to make sure, to confirm it. And they were like, oh yeah, you've got at least 5 years, no problem. We moved in, we put new flooring, painted the entire house. 3 months later, water came in through the roof. We had to replace the whole roof, which of course wasn't covered under home insurance, but the interior damage was. So
you guys get so much water out in Mesa, it's not even funny.
oh yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
So Daniel, we've talked about the general pretty much coverage A through F on the homeowner's policy. How is that different when it comes to a condo policy?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So condos, right? So this is the thing. The condo will have what's called an HOA of the condo association is going to have a master insurance policy. What you always want to do is you want to get a copy, you want to read the CC&Rs of the home insurance of the condo association to find out what is the HOA responsible for and what are you responsible for as the homeowner. Because we've seen a lot of these HOAs over time, they've kind of recovering less and less. They're trying to also save money on their HOA dues and their fees, so they're also doing that. So you want to get a copy of the master policy to determine, is there a master insurance policy? Because sometimes there's not.
So sometimes there is, and it just doesn't cover anything. Sometimes
Yes.
we've had to insure these policies like it's just a regular home because it doesn't cover the outside, it doesn't cover the roof, it doesn't. It all it says is common maintenance for the area. So there's shrubs and trees in between the townhouses or the condos or the apartments.
Yeah, so I mean, if you've got a standard condo that does cover like the way it should be, so then you're going to get what's called a condo policy, which is going to be different. So a condo policy is going to cover the interior of your home. So it's going to cover, it's a studs in policy. It's going to cover the walls, bedrooms, bathrooms, things like that. And the HOA master policy is going to cover the exterior. It's also going to cover the roof, right? So then you want to make sure that with the coverages that are most important for the condo policy is, we talked about it, loss assessment, right?
So explain to them what loss assessment is.
Yeah, so this is one where we've seen, if you call the 800 number to get a quote, you're going to get $500 or $1,000 for loss assessment. The why it's important, you really want at least $10,000 of loss assessment, is that the HOA, if they have a master insurance policy, there's a deductible. They have a deductible on the policy, like all policies do. Typically, they're $5,000 to $10,000 to $25,000, right?
Most of the time, I've seen it 5 to 10. So last time I did one, I did a quote for a condo maybe like 2 weeks ago, and I had their master policy in front of me, and it said $5,000 deductible. So when I talked to the client, I told him, hey, you're going to see a loss assessment on your policy. And what it is if something happens and you have to file a claim with the master policy, your deductible is $5,000. So we will cover that and you'll have a $250 deductible. So instead of paying $5,000 out of pocket, you're going to pay your policy $250 so we can give you the $5,000 to pay that deductible.
Yeah, I mean, so it works in tandem. So a loss assessment kind of covers that gap. That's why it's really important. So,
and a lot of people don't know that.
No, I mean, that's why we got to make sure we talk about this. I'm glad we are.
Yeah. So when it comes to, all right, so we talked about homeowner insurance and then condo. What is an investment property policy and why should I have an investment property? Let's say, for example, I'm renting my home. Why should I have an investment property policy instead of a homeowner's policy on a home that I'm renting out to a tenant?
Yeah, I mean, so if you are buying a home and it's going to be an investment property, that's a very vague, right, question. So the question is, you're going to have a long-term tenant in there? Are you going to be doing a short-term like a VRBO, Airbnb? Are you going to be providing your own furniture? Is the tenant going to be providing furniture? So these are different kind of questions and coverages that we would put. So like if you are going to cover, if you're not going to put your furniture and stuff in there, so you wouldn't need that coverage. That's why it's different. Also the liability exposure. So now that you have a tenant in there, you're going to have an increased different kind of liability. So an investment policy is going to cover that kind of liability if the tenant, gets injured on your property, or if they, they do something negligent, right? So that's why you definitely want to make sure you have an investment property. But as far as coverages for making sure your home gets repaired or rebuilt if there's a fire or, accidental discharge of water or storm damage, that's going to also be covered. But that's why you really want to make sure you get the right policy.
And you also, instead of loss of use, it's called loss of rent. So at that point, if something does happen to your home, the insurance company is going to cover the loss of rent while it's being fixed also. But a lot of people, and we see this not daily, but pretty regularly. We'll have a client, they'll buy their home from us, they'll have home insurance on there, but then they won't let us know 2-3 years later when they move out and they turn their house into an investment. And what will happen is the insurance company will just flat out deny the claim and then cancel your policy.
Or what we've also seen too is, people are just getting creative on different ways to just generate more income for their families. So we've seen it where they have a home and they've got a guest room. They're going to have someone, live there, or they've got a detached, a little 1-bedroom place outside that they're also doing. So we want to make sure if you own a home and you're renting out part of it, we've got that home sharing endorsement as well that we always got to make sure to add on there and, to make sure we provide that.
So always, of course, reach out to us if you have any questions about your situation. Don't be afraid to talk to us about it, because it's better for us to know and to coach you and add those extra endorsements, and at the end of the day, whenever you file a claim, it just gets denied, and we don't want that to happen to you. So Daniel, let's talk about flood insurance. I know a lot of Phoenix isn't in a flood area, but there's so many random pockets that are. So what can you tell us about flood insurance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like flood insurance, right? The only time we talk about it a lot of times is, unfortunately, we talk about it when it's required by law to have flood insurance. So if you are in a FEMA designated flood zone where you're required to have flood insurance, is typically when we see people put flood insurance. Oddly enough, there's a lot of pockets here in Arizona where there's flood zones. Like part of North Scottsdale, there's parts in by the lower valley, the South Mountain over there in Phoenix area. So we see a lot of that. So if you're in a flood zone, you are going to be required to have flood insurance. So that's going to cover, because one of the things that home insurance doesn't cover is flood and earthquake, right? So the flood is when the water is coming and it's coming running down. When it's coming from the ground up, water damage is not covered under home insurance. So then you would want to get a flood insurance policy, and flood insurance is going to cover those kind of claims where water is kind of coming through your home from the ground.
And I know a lot of people that don't know this, but do you need to be in a flood zone to get flood insurance out?
And that's a great question. So if you are in a flood zone, you're going to be required to have flood insurance. If you're not in a flood zone, you are able to get flood insurance. And we definitely have seen it really be important, because there is times where you have water kind of rising, especially during those crazy flash floods where we get a lot of water really quick, and the water kind of goes down to your home and it comes in through the basement. We've seen, or even if you don't have a basement but you've got a sub level that's a little bit lower than the ground level, we've seen water come in, and we've seen claims obviously not get approved because of the way the water came into the home without flood insurance.
And the good thing is now, as of this year, you can go private on flood now instead of going through the NFIPA, whatever it's called.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about flood insurance over the past couple of years here, because we have a lot of flood pockets, and we're always looking for the way to get the best pricing for our clients for flood insurance. So we've got over 20 insurance carriers when it comes to private flood insurance as well. And we have FEMA approved flood insurance as well. If it's better, we always quote it both ways to find out what's better for our clients.
Of course. So Daniel, what are some common claims and how can people avoid them?
This is kind of the funny thing, right? So what do you think? What's the number one claim we see here in the desert?
Well, I already know the answer.
You already know the answer?
So I can't be a consumer, because we talk about this on a daily basis. So I already know the answer, but tell our audience.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. So really the number one claim that we see right now in Arizona is non-weather related water claims.
What does that mean?
So honestly, say for example, bathtub gets a crack in it, and water, starts seeping through and goes inside the house, causing damage, or AC unit gets the condensation from the AC unit starts trickling down from the attic.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't have pans.
The pan drip, and it causes damage, right? So we see that, or just little water leaks that happen over time that cause eventually a lot of water damage.
I've seen a lot where it's the lines that are behind the bathtub, the toilets.
Yes.
Sometimes those burst, or even kitchen lines. Those will burst, or something will happen where it's non-weather related water claims are huge out here. And what I've been told by a couple of people is just the water pressure from the street into the home is too high in Phoenix.
Yeah, so we see that quite a bit. So that's kind of one of the more common ones. And then, of course, we do get, it's not as common as it used to be. Fire claims, right? It's we have a couple here and there. But usually if there is a fire, it's a kitchen fire.
Most of the time, all I see on people's things is water related, or what is it? It's displacement of water. Pretty much. That's all I see on whenever I'm looking at the clue reports for these people.
Yeah, I mean, so really how to avoid those things. I mean, it's a question. I mean, it can get a little frustrating at times because how do you know if you've got water leaks somewhere, right? So the best thing to do is look at your water bill and just kind of see if it starts going up over time, then you know you've got a leak somewhere, right?
Yeah, because sometimes you can't even tell. Let's say, for example, a water line bursts in between the walls. It's going to take a while for you to see that either water's kind of building on the wall, but like you said, just look at your water bill, and if there's a drastic change.
Yeah, I mean, and I think also too, some of the things that you always can do to make sure is just good home ownership, right? Just constantly looking and just maintaining your home. So making sure that your roof's in good condition, making sure that you have your AC unit reviewed at least yearly, just making sure you're just maintaining your home.
Yeah, just common home maintenance. And I know that you've told me this before, but certain home warranty companies even offer free preventative services through your home warranty. So always look into resources and always make sure you're changing out your filters, checking your water bill, just kind of doing pre-maintenance stuff. Just like when you go to the doctor, you always get your blood exams and you check your vitals every year. Always do that on your home just to make sure everything's kind of running right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of because the thing is like those water claims can add up quite quick. We definitely, and then also too, it could cause mold damage, right? And mold is something that also too it's very hard to deal with. It can get expensive, and it's typically very limited coverage on home insurance policies, or they don't even cover it.
So let me ask you this: right now, as consumers are buying it through mortgages, who is paying for the home insurance every year?
Yeah. So, of course, the consumer is paying for the home insurance policy, right? They're paying it, but it's included in your monthly mortgage payment. You have an escrow balance. It includes your property taxes and a fee for the home insurance. But once a year, that mortgage company sends a check or however they want to do it to pay your home insurance policy. So it's really important that if you do get a letter from your mortgage company and it says, oh, your service provider has changed and it's no longer going to be Bank A, it's Bank B, and your loan number is now this, notify your home insurance carrier, your brokerage, and notify them so that they know, so that they can update it and make sure they send the bill to the correct place.
So Daniel, I've paid off my house. It's paid off. I don't have a mortgage anymore. Why do I still need home insurance?
Oh, well, you don't need it, right? I mean, so at the end of the day, it's funny. So, of course, if you do have a mortgage on your home, it is required by law to have home insurance. If you don't have a mortgage on your home, power to you, kudos. I mean, hey, that's huge. You definitely want to make sure it's because again, can you afford to be without your house in case it's destroyed in a fire? So that's why you always want to make sure you have home insurance. I mean, it's it's most people's biggest asset and investment, biggest purchase in life. So make sure you always want to protect it.
So Daniel, where is the best place to buy home insurance?
Yeah, I mean, so there's so many ways you can buy it, right? I mean, you just Google, home insurance and where to get it. I would say the best place, and I mean, I'm a little biased, but the best place is always to go through a brokerage because they deal with it on a daily basis, and they've got a team that's typically very experienced, like our team here, really experienced. We deal with home insurance all day long. We do a lot of home insurance all day long. Where you really want to try and avoid is those 800 numbers, right? Because they a lot of times will give policies that are just not correct. I mean, or there's not enough coverage.
And I will say this, you also always want to review your policy just to make sure you've got proper coverage. And if you have any questions or you want us to review your policy, we can, because we've seen some, and it's going to sound bad, some other brokers will just cookie cut some of these policies, and we've seen some of these other companies or even online companies, they'll give you the bare minimum coverage just to make sure your price qualifies to what the lender needs sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, we get it. We're all trying to, make sure we can get a house and make sure we can afford it. But your home insurance it's one of those things with home insurance. It's a lot of times there's always a saying. It's like everybody wants the cheapest policy when they're getting it, and then they want the best policy when there's a claim. Okay. And it typically doesn't work that way.
One thing we didn't cover, but I guess we can cover right now is what is the typical deductible on a home insurance policy, condo or investment?
Yeah, I mean, so like we do is our typical deductible is $1,000, right? But typically in the industry, you'll see a percentage based deductible. So if you've got a $200,000 house of coverage A, your replacement cost of that, you see a 1% deductible, so it could be a $2,000 deductible. So you want to be mindful and see that in your quote what the deductible is, because we've seen some deductibles that are 35, $4,000.
Yeah, it just depends on how big the house is. Too.
Yeah, and the client's like, well, I'm never gonna be able to even afford the deductible, and I'm like, yeah, I hear you.
So Daniel, of course, thank you for walking across the hall to record with us today. But if someone wants to reach out to us, where could they reach out to us to get a quote or even have questions about their home insurance or auto insurance?
Yeah, I mean that's good. That's a good one, right? So definitely our website, greenplanetinsurance.com. You can go there, check us out on our social medias, right? We're on Facebook and Instagram these days,
and the TikTok,
these days. So thanks to you, right? The marketing genius here.
So on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, they're all under Green Planet Insurance.
Yep.
And then, of course, if you want to reach out to us on the phone.
Yep. Phone number 602-368-2124. And you could check us out online if you Google us. And we've got over, 350 5-star Google reviews from clients, So, check us out. And
we're doing something right if we've got that many Google reviews, I guess.
Yes. I would like to think so.
I think so. All right. Well, thank you, Daniel, of course. And thank you for everyone listening. And if you have any questions or would like any more information about us looking at your policy, or if you'd like a quote, please reach out to us on our social or give us a call here at the office. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.